Chad. He's Matt. This is Metal Slug from the Neo Geo. We're going to get into it. Matthew, let's start with graphics. Hit us off first.
All right, with graphics, I do find the game to. This is a good sprite work, animation, all kinds of stuff. I think it's very much Super Nintendo inspired, but it's got a little bit more to it. I think, and I definitely love the environment, the way they made environments look, and all the animations of the characters. I think it's a solid presentation overall, to be honest with you. So I think I'm going to hit it with a solid 4 on this one.
I am too, and my reasoning is it's very good, it's very interesting, but it's not exactly something that you would consider to be wholly unique. You look at a Zelda sprite or a Mario sprite, and you know exactly what that game is, and then if you see a clone of that, you know exactly who they got it from. This doesn't really have that feeling. It feels a little bit more generic, but still well done, even if it's not very creative. Like these sprites are very kind of commonplace for the era. So I'll give it a 4. Strong effort, just doesn't have that je ne sais quoi that makes it its own thing. Matthew, sound.
I think on both fronts, this game is solid in the sound department. From the music is always setting the right tone, no matter what the stages you're playing in. Like really gets you pumped up for the action. And I also love the cheesy sound effects too when the characters die and stuff. I think that's great. That was like rah rah, all them crazy little effects. It kind of keeps you in the action as well. So yeah, it's pretty solid overall. I'm gonna probably stick with a 4 again.
I got to agree. The sound effects are, I think, the better part of the sound factor. The guns and the explosions are just very, very fun. The music doesn't do much for me. It does set the mood and kind of put you in the right kind of frame of mind. But as far as anything memorable or hummable or like you're gonna Google it or YouTube it, I wouldn't exactly say that it's deep on its solo song catalog. So I'll give it a 4. Respectable, but it's missing that X factor. Matthew, gameplay.
This see, this is where it gets tough. As much as I enjoy the gameplay, there are some issues to it. This is arcade gaming at its finest, and this being a run and gun shooter, your main issue you're going to run into is that there's not really an auto fire mechanic. You have to tap 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 the entire time in order to shoot, and that can become cumbersome in the more difficult situations. And there's also there's some platforming from time to time that isn't like always as tight as it probably could be, but none of that is bad enough to hinder it too much. I think in terms of gameplay, it works just about everywhere else. So I think I'm going to hit a 4 again.
This is where we're going to deviate. I'm giving this a 5. I don't mind that it doesn't have an auto fire mechanic. It gives you kind of a sense of realism, but it also kind of gives you a sense that this game is different than what we were else getting on the consoles at the time, because this was a arcade port. So I definitely got to give it a 5. It's a hell of a lot of fun. It's as far as a shooter goes, shooters don't have a lot of variety to them in the first place, and this game it was very enjoyable to get into. So I can't not give it a 5. It's functional, it's practical, and it's a very enjoyable gameplay experience. Matthew, fun factor.
Did you ever experience the? Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask you one more question before we moved on. Did you experience any slowdown in this game? I know this game was like famous for that, like with the big explosions that
a
take
little,
place.
but nothing to write home about. Fun factor.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, despite that slight issue, this game is a blast. I think it's because I feel like I'm in a straight up 80s action movie. And the set pieces they bring to you you're always wondering what's going to happen next, what ridiculous situation they're going to put you into as far as shooters go. So I always had a blast in that aspect. So I'm definitely going with a solid 5.
I too am going with a 5. It just has a fun little vibe to it. It could have been a little bit more hokey, in my opinion. There's some sight gags that I thought worked, but I thought they could have done a little bit more. The game was definitely designed with the idea of appealing to a wider audience. You can just tell that by the way the enemies are designed, the way your little POWs are designed, the way the tanks are designed. They're more cutesy instead of intimidating, and there's a reason for that. So I think they could have gone a little bit more in that direction, but definitely a 5 for me. What about challenge, Matt?
This game can get quite difficult, but that doesn't mean that it isn't balanced. I think if you are agile quick enough on your feet, the challenge is fair enough to a degree. It just sometimes it can be a little bit unfair because when all the explosions and things are taking place, it's hard to avoid certain shots by certain enemies, and that can get a little frustrating. But again, not enough to deviate it too much. I believe it's fair enough. I want to say 4.
I too will give it a 4. There are some things about this game I think that could have been tweaked a little bit better, but overall, I think you're getting a really good experience. And I don't think the gameplay is so hard that it negates wanting to play it, but I don't think it's too easy where you're basically just bored by the second level because it's just a simple run through. So definitely a 4 as well. So we're in agreement on that one. That takes our total all the way to a 21.5 out of 25. Unfortunately, that will not be enough to get a all-time grade on our scale. At the end of the day, that brings us to a 86%. So a very strong, recommendable game, just not something that's going to make the Hall of Fame. Oh well, too bad, so sad. So we're doing something different. We're going to be recording our podcast via the YouTube for a while, so be sure to check that out. If you missed that, it'll be up on twitch.tv/ComptonGameCorp. Thinking about renaming the channel to something more generic like NerdCorp or Real NerdCorp, so keep an eye out for that when that does finally happen, because we do a lot of recordings on this channel. And be sure to check out realnerdcorp.com, RealNerdcorp.com for more podcasts, reviews, and whatnot. You know, that's the basic way of following us, plus Twitter, NERDCORP. Matt, what are your personals?
I'm NerdCorp on Twitch, same on Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter at ChadNerdCorp, ChadNERDCORP, and on the Instagram at ChadSpotowat. For Matt, I'm Chad. This has been the GameCorp Retro Review. We're out of here. We're switching over to the podcast side of things. We'll see you next week with another review.